The information contained in this episode is for informational purposes only. No material is intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment.
We need a revolution. There's only one solution. I need somebody to show me the love. We need a revolution.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Informed Life Radio on 1150 AM, KKNW, and CHD TV, and streaming to other platforms. I'm your host today, Bernadette Pager. I'm so glad that you could join us today in this holiday season. It's very exciting times going on, a lot of change, just so many things that really shows that this health revolution is well underway. And I hope everybody here is feeling empowered to really make changes in your life, to find that information that you need to find in order to live that informed life and make those decisions. This hour of radio is brought to you by Informed Choice Washington, by the members of Informed Choice Washington. That's informedchoicewa.org. This is a great nonprofit in the state of Washington that works to educate as well as advocate for your rights, for your health freedom rights, parental rights, religious rights. It's all about informed consent. Your right to have enough information and to examine that information without coercion or undue influence and make the best decisions for yourself and your family. That's what we fight for at Informed Choice Washington. As always, so grateful for any donation that you can drop into the bucket. So just visit informedchoicewa.org. And then you can sign up to get free newsletters. They've got a great Substack every week. So every week following the radio show, a new Substack comes out. And there you'll find links to things we talked about on the show, as well as some other key information in the news that we feel is really important to you. Gerald Browd and Bob Reynolds are the key writers of that, with some help from Lisa Templeton. So grateful for their hard work every week to bring you the information that you need to know. So the views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of KKNW or CHD. And we're not giving medical or legal advice. This is just conversation. This is what makes this nation great, is great discussions. Everything should be out there, able to be discussed and be debated. For too long, the issues we cover on this show were censored and silenced, but no more. Free speech has kind of been let loose, and it's very exciting times. And our guest today is somebody who was with me through the censored times, and now his voice has really been unleashed. A lot of you have met him before. His name is Dr. James Lyons-Weiler, but I like to call him Dr. Jack. Hey, Dr. Jack, welcome to Informed Life Radio. Oh, we're not hearing you. You need to click a button there. It might be, oh, there we go.
Hey, Bernadette, you freedom-loving American, you.
Absolutely. You know, the older I get, the more I really appreciate what our forefathers did for us and this great
wives.
Experiment.
And their wives.
And their wives.
Because when they went home at night, their wives told them what to do, what to think. let's not pretend.
No,
Okay.
Let's not pretend. Absolutely not. Really, I mean, life really is about collaboration and partnership and support. And yeah, it is true that the forefathers did get a lot of the attention in history, but those foremothers, which sounds like I'm insulting them, but they were as crucial. I know, you know, in my relationship, because I'm the advocate, my husband is the supporter of me. Without him standing beside me, backing me up, picking up the weight around the house when I'm gone, I couldn't do this, especially when our son was younger. And you're the same way. You've got a significant other, your dear Gracie, who is just your rock. And, I just can't imagine doing what we do without their support.
Yeah, they're incredibly the unsung heroes of what we now call MAHA, what we used to call the vaccine risk aware movement, what we used to call the informed choice, community, all of
Yeah.
us, we wouldn't be anywhere without. There's so many unsung heroes that need to be thanked and thought of on a regular basis. And it's really nice during the holiday times, to be extra special nice to them, because you have no excuses. It's the holiday. Spend time with your family.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Spend time with your holiday. And it's for a lot of us in the movement, we have a hard time turning that switch to off for a little while,
Definitely,
but it
definitely.
is important. It's important to preserve those family bonds and to recharge ourselves by letting loose a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Jack, in particular, I'm gonna quote from you from your Substack, which is the key topic we're talking about today. So really, from day one, you've been saying that the use of PCR tests, which I'm going to have you explain in layman's terms to our audience, using them as the quote, the primary driver of pandemic policy would guarantee a tidal wave of false positives, distort epidemiology, and weaponize diagnostic noise as public fear, unquote. I just you were so absolutely spot on with what happened. And you recently wrote in your Substack, you've got a great Substack that is called Popular Rationalism. I encourage everybody to subscribe, go look you up. Um, Talking about how public health has not yet learned their lessons regarding these tests and the use of their test. And they are gearing up to do it all over again with bird flu, with the avian flu. So from the outside, let's make sure that people listening as they're driving home from work or wherever they happen to be, explain to us what a PCR test is and what it does not.
Sure, absolutely. So, listen, I'm not saying the PCR test can't be useful for diagnostics. That would be silly and ridiculous. PCR tests are used all the time for diagnostics. They're used all the time for diagnostics with viruses, even. It's not a problem. The problem really comes when you start saying that, a virus is present because you've reached a certain amount of signal on the machine when you haven't calibrated that machine to zero, and there is noise in the signal, and there's noise in the noise, and you have noise plus noise, and then you have noise plus signal. When the virus is present, or anything you're trying to detect with PCR is present, you have noise plus signal.
So
The
back
deal
us up
is
a
that
little
these,
bit more, though. I want to simplify it anymore, Jack. So a person goes to the doctor. This is the test where they take the swab and they shove it up your nose.
yeah.
Okay. Then explain what happens to that swab so people understand what this machine is and what you're talking about with cycles.
But yeah, I'll get to the details, but I want people to really understand here what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that we can't use PCR, because that's really important. People, when we first talked about this starting in April of 2020, when you first came to me saying, hey, wait a minute, what about this PCR test? You were way ahead of the curve. I immediately recognized what they were doing, because I used to do this type of PCR in the lab, and I used to teach how to analyze the data. And they were missing a critical component. The critical component of the test is to know when you just have a human saliva sample or a nasal swab that doesn't have the virus. See, that's what we're distinguishing. We're not saying, okay, we have enough signal to think that the virus is there. And so, before we get way down in the weeds and what PCR is and all the rest, I just want to be sure that people understand, yeah, you can use PCR as a toolkit. It's a valid toolkit. The problem is that we were all being lied to about these particular tests for SARS-CoV-2 and now for the H5N1 influenza, where they're saying that it's quantitative when it's not truly quantitative. To be quantitative, you have to know where zero is. Yeah, and so what they've done is they made the kits where, and I wrote to Peter Marks about this, and I did the simulations, and I did the podcast, and I wrote the articles, and I said, hey, if you run these PCR tests the way that you're proposing to run them, and you only require the manufacturers to send you data on finding the virus when it is present, but you don't also demand for them to show you data, what the signal looks like when the virus is absent, then all you have to do is turn the dial up, and then you'll have a pandemic, and turn the dial down, and the pandemic will go away. And Peter Marks said, oh, that's interesting. I'll take it up with my colleagues. Every single molecular biologist that ever worked in a lab and actually did PCR understands what I'm talking about for quantitative RT-PCR. RT being real time or reverse transcriptase, but there's two uses, unfortunately. But this is actually the most important thing. The quantitative PCR that they're saying is quantitative is not quantitative unless you have a negative control that tells you here's where zero is. So I know it's probably pretty late where people are to get down on the weeds on this, but just imagine, give you an analogy. You have a smoke detector in your house. And if that smoke detector isn't calibrated properly, every time you walk by and breathe on it, it'll go off, right? Just because there's some ambient increase in temperature or humidity or something, it just picks it up. There's something going on, okay? And heat will turn, these smoke detectors, modern smoke detectors don't just detect smoke, they also detect heat. So if you imagine every time you walk by your smoke detector and your body heat puts it off, that's because it wasn't calibrated properly. It thinks that body heat is significant. So when they stick that thing up your nose and then they take a nasal swab, they should also have a matching sample that is similar to a human nasal swab, where it absolutely won't light up whatsoever because the virus is known not to be present. You can't just use sterile water because what we're really concerned about is non-specific amplification. That means you have a reaction where pieces of DNA map to other pieces of DNA, they line up, and then they make a copy, and they make another copy, and they make another copy. So you have to have some of the background DNA present, and these kits would have to have something in there that is sufficiently calibrated to say, okay, there's, non-specific amplification that happens, but that only increases way over here, as opposed to when the virus is present, it increases way over here. And what I mean by increase is when it makes a copy, it's actually an explosion. This copy makes 2 copies, these 2 copies make 4 copies, these 4 copies make 8 copies. So it actually goes up like an exponential curve. And that happens whether the signal is present or not, whether the virus is present or not. So unless we know the difference between where the curve is supposed to go up and where without a virus present, and where the curve is supposed to go up with the virus absent, which is always later. We also have another source of noise, which is the variation in the starting material. So that when they do a nasal swab, different people have different amounts of virus. Different people have different amounts of every kind of DNA in their sample. So the different amount of starting sample actually helps determine where that curve takes off. The difference between those exponential parts of the curve is called delta CT. So here's the cycle threshold for a negative sample. Here's the cycle threshold for a positive sample. And you look at the difference between those two. And that difference right there is absent. You don't even have it if you don't, this part's missing, if you don't have the negative control.
Gotcha.
So of course, every sample will eventually reach signal. They're both going to increase. You just need to know the difference this way horizontally. And it's very, very hard for the everyday layperson to understand this. And so they get away with it. I was concerned when the monkeypox virus came along. And the monkeypox virus, they were going to use RT-PCR. So I looked it up and I studied all the kits. Oh, thank goodness. All the existing kits for the virus that was the surrogate for polio or for monkeypox. Those kits actually had a negative control in them.
They did those correctly.
They did those, which proves that they know how to do it. Number one. Number two, I said to everybody, and I wrote on my blog or Substack, I said, don't worry about it. There's not going to be an Mpox. They can't do it. They can't pull it off. So then I looked into the H5N1 kits, and originally the H5N1 kits also had positive or negative controls. Something has changed, and that's why we're talking about it.
Okay.
What has changed is that the kits that they're bringing forward now, they don't have a negative control, and in fact, they have the opposite. They have a positive control, because they're trying to say that if we have a positive control, then we can set the threshold for where the positive samples will go, and then we'll only reach back a little bit, and then we'll be able to see if they make it into where the positive control is. which is a bunch of hokey baloney. So they're using the opposite. They're trying to say that it's quantitative, but it's not. So
And when you say they, tell me who they are. Who's driving this change
the
that could
pharmacomedical complex. It's right here. I wrote it down. It must be true. The pharmacomedical complex are all the players, all the stakeholders that stand to make money if there's another pandemic. If you can think of any entity that we've all learned through COVID, and many people knew before that with the childhood vaccines, that people make money hand over fist. Look at how hard they're reacting over the loss of one dose of hepatitis B in the childhood vaccine schedule.
Mm-hmm.
That's because of the billions that they're going to lose in dollars. It's not
And-
because they care about, the
Right.
increased efficacy of hepatitis B protection, because it doesn't exist.
No, the loss of one dose among children whose mothers were tested and found that these children are absolutely not at risk of even acquiring hepatitis B at birth. So
Yeah, but look how hard they're reacting. You think that it's Armageddon. You think that all of their hospital walls are going to fall in, and it's just this dust. Everything's going to go to dust because they can't give that one dose. And what a lot of people have learned, and they were shocked to realize, is that, wait a minute, the reason why you're giving this is because you guys don't do adequate testing and do sufficiently accurate testing to find out which mothers have hepatitis B. So you're putting it on the backs of every newborn?
yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. An adult incompetence being babies bearing the weight. No, I don't think so. So proud of the new ASIP and how, they are just one by one talking. You and I for years have been just yelling at these members as we've been streaming these ASIP meetings. And it's been so heartwarming to hear one of them speak up and actually say the things I want to yell. The common sense things, like the discussion at the last ASIP meeting. Who was it was saying that an infant's immune system, is different. It's not mature. It's different than a 2-month-old, than a 4-month-old, than an adult, and their kidney filtration rates are different. I'm like, hallelujah! I can't believe they're actually saying this. And then it was one of the old timers who chimed in. He said, "Well, what has that got to do with anything?" Are you kidding me? What has that got to do with how your immune system responds to something you're injected with? I mean, it's been so refreshing to hear.
Yeah.
So we know during COVID, they didn't have the negative control. It was really designed to increase and to show as many positive cases as possible. It really seems like it was intentional to create this pandemic. It was somewhat driven at that time, though, by the CDC direction. Is there, with our new HHS leader and new people at CDC, I know it's not completely shifted over to the ethics we would like to see. Is there a HHS or CDC component to these new avian flu kits? Not, being
It's
changed.
FDA for Bernadette. So FDA has a division within it that's responsible for overseeing diagnostics. It's a medical procedure. So the FDA is the one that determines whether emergency use authorization and so on. So I'm not sure. It took me a while to dig into the new H5N1 kits and what they were saying. I'm not entirely sure that the people that are at the FDA that are in charge of testing understand the very large difference between having a negative control and throwing in a positive control and saying this is what a typical positive sample might look like. The way they did it the last time in COVID is they actually did try to look at some population levels to try to say, well, the CTs are typically this and typically that. But it took independent scientists around the world to publish that an 11% false positive rate was published in Australia, which is devastating to using anything as a screen. I mean, you don't want a 1.5% false positive rate if you're going to screen every human being.
Yeah.
Just the sheer numbers of people every time you run that test. And there was actually a Duke study where they isolated Marines to try to quantify how fast the spread was, what the effects of testing were.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to conclude that if we test and take people out of the locality, they were at an abandoned campus. There was due to the lockdown, they took advantage of the lockdown. There were no students on campus. And they paired the Marines to two to a room in different buildings, and they ran like PCR tests every day. And anytime somebody tested positive, they took them off, and they said it still spread. They're just randomly pulling out false positives. Most of the cases were asymptomatic. If you read the paper, like, wait a minute, where is all this asymptomatic COVID coming from? Think about it. If you don't have COVID, you don't have the virus, and then you test positive, you have asymptomatic COVID, right? So just all the pieces of the puzzle fit together. So I'm reading the paper, and I couldn't believe at the end of the paper, they said, what this paper shows is that this virus spreads so easily that we have to test every American every day.
That's ridiculous.
Could you possibly try to sell your test kits even any harder?
Yeah.
Okay, so wait a minute, ma'am. You have 2 floors. You have 14 rooms in your house total. That means you need 14 vacuum cleaners, right? I mean, look at, so if we're stuck in a world where they're going to have a magic dial that they can turn a pandemic on or off, that's completely unacceptable. There's another solution to this if they don't want to put negative controls in, which is what Sing-Hang Lee and a whole cadre of us got together. We put together the nucleic acid technology, nucleic acid assay technology evaluation consortium. And we determined that if you sequence a certain percentage of these samples that you're saying are positive, you can actually just estimate the false positive rate. So let's say you test 100 people, 5 of them test positive, and then 3 of them, you can't get a sequence out of them. Well, that means you really only had 2 positives, right? So it's 2%, not 5%. And that's exactly what they should do. And I'm not sure at FDA that they quite have their heads wrapped around this. I'm not putting anybody down at the FDA. I'm just saying that it's a shell game. Don't look over here. It's over here, by the kit manufacturers saying, well, what we really need to do is this. We learned our lesson from COVID. Then it sounds right to say we'll have a positive control. The problem is you still don't know where 0 is. The typical positive test case on average in the population is actually determined based on no negative control. So, it makes you want to pull your hair out.
It does. It does. So it sounds like you need to try to get the ear of somebody there at the FDA. But this is the same game we see everywhere. We've got industry that they follow those who are critiquing them and finding their flaws. And then they get together in a room and they decide, okay, here's how we're going to pretend as if we've corrected course, fool the regulators and drive the next big event. I mean, they made so much money.
Stupid. Yeah, they're not stupid. They know what they're doing. So it's not time to relax. When the H5N1, this big scare that's coming from the UK, when that comes to the United States, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to be there saying, wait a minute, I just got off the phone with my friend, Dr. James Lyons-Weiler. He wants to know, right? So, when Kennedy was nominated, I started writing white papers. By the time he was confirmed, I'd written 26 white papers. Those white papers are now circulating all throughout HHS.
That's fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah. And I actually attended a MAHA summit, and somebody from HHS came up to me and she said, you're him. And I said, well, yes, that's true. You're you. Now that we've established that. She said, oh, you don't understand. You're a legend at HHS.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, that's good to know. People are going to say, well, he's lying because he'd be working there if he was that good. Well, I'm going to break some news here today. The only Bobby's tried to hire me 3 times at HHS. And the only reason why I'm not hired is because I criticized a sitting president at one time for not running the vaccine safety conference or the commission that he promised that he would.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, if it's all political, and I'm an apolitical person, I don't vote either way when it comes to president, and that's just the way that I am. I don't believe in the process enough to commit my name to one side or the other. I don't belong to either party. I used to be a Democrat, but I don't think that it's appropriate for me to speak about something I don't know enough about.
No,
I don't know enough about the presidential campaign process to really, in good faith, participate in it as if it's a democratic process.
Yeah, well, and it's such a tangle of issues now and stances, and it's like I'm trying to figure out how, even like if somebody was to ask me, like, what's my political bent, and I would say that I'm a constitutional conservative environmentalist who doesn't believe in climate change, right?
Yeah.
But who is against, how pesticides are being used. And, I mean, there's no clear path. Everything is just such a tangle. So you really have to be
We need an
partyless.
anti-corporatism party.
Well,
I don't think that corporations should have the influence that they do. And when they
No.
rewrote the election contribution laws to allow corporations to de facto donate as much money as they
Yeah.
possibly wanted, that guaranteed that we're not going to have anybody but very wealthy people or people that can garner a lot of money from corporations running the executive branch of the U.S. of the United States. So I'm anti-corporatist, and not just in terms of regulatory capture, but also their influence on elections. It has to be reined in.
It absolutely does. So, explain. So you've explained the problem that we during COVID, the tests weren't set up correctly. Too many false positives. And now for bird flu, new tests are coming out, and they have a similar problem. Faulty control. So what's the solution? What call to action are you sending out there to listeners?
I think we should all contact our congressmen and senators and make sure that a certain percentage, so that we don't swamp Secretary Kennedy's inbox, but a certain percentage of people who test positive with RT-PCR, RT-qPCR, they call it, it's really non-quantitative PCR, are sequenced. And it's very simple to do so. I mean, listen, for SARS-CoV-2, Dr. Singhang Lee from Milford, Connecticut, actually published a set of what are called primers. These are the, sorry, I'm going to use a large word, but oligonucleotides. These are the DNA sequences that you actually use to do sequencing. You use them to do PCR as well. Well, he created one that's what were nested. So you actually sequence through the primers, and then if the primer sites are evolving. Listen, the PCR tests for RNA viruses and DNA viruses, they're not stable over time either, because they actually evolve. The viruses evolve away from the test. So if we sequenced, say, if you're going to test 200 people, you have to sequence 10% of them. That would give a reasonable estimate. It's probably more like 30, 40 people. But if you sequence 2,000, then you should do, 50 people. If you sequence 10,000, you should do 500 people. It's not expensive to do Sanger sequencing. And the purpose of this would be to get accurate population level estimates of infection rates and transmission rates. Here's the killer. All of the efficacy data on the mRNA vaccines and the Janssen & Janssen were based on PCR. This type of PCR. None of it is accurate. We have no idea what the actual, they just said, the positive, if and then remember the time when Michelle Walensky said, don't bother sending us any biological samples if they're from the vaccinated, because we won't sequence them. What she was doing there was she was saying, we really only want to blame new variants on the unvaccinated.
Exactly.
This is the kind of baloney that put Bobby Kennedy as Secretary of HHS. And this is the kind of baloney that we can never allow to happen again. And that's why at Popular Rationalism, every day I'm looking for, I'm what's it called? Watchdogging every day to make sure that some of the baloney that's leaking through. I mean, I'm going to be publishing a critique of that paper that you sent me, Bernadette. You're the one that sent me that New England Journal of Medicine paper of a group of people saying that at the state level, doctors need to pay attention to information at the state level and ignore ACIP and ignore FDA and Bobby and everybody else. So, I mean,
and one of those was Mandy Cohen. Did you notice? Former CDC director was on there. Yeah, I mean, ridiculous. So I want
disgruntled. I'm sorry, but these are disgruntled employees to me.
Yeah,
they really are. If you think about it, technically speaking, they're disgruntled employees that are trying to get back at the people that fired them, and it's kind of sad, actually.
It is sad, but also dangerous to the public. So, but this is a very complex topic, and I know people may want to take action and not feel like they know enough to really. So, I encourage them to find your Substack, popularrationalism.substack.com, and you can just look for the post about PCR and avian flu, and you will find it. You can contact Dr. Jack through his Substack if you have more questions, so that you feel like you kind of really understand what he's trying to explain and generate some good noise about, not bad PCR noise, but good citizen involvement noise. But I also want to share with people, like your whole Substack. Let me see if I can make this a bit bigger without crashing things. Let's see. There we go. There's a little bit bigger. See if that showed up. Yeah. So I can't keep up with you. You have always been somebody that, like, your volume output is like 100 times what I can do. But I was just fascinated by some of the articles that or Substack posts that you've come up with. So if you wouldn't mind, let's touch on the one you just mentioned. A Rational Moment, critique of a New England Journal of Medicine article, which was called The Essential Role of States in Protecting Immunization Access. So tell us a little bit about that one and your concerns there.
Listen, I linked to the full article so you can read the full article yourself. You can see the arguments that are made. But this Cohen et al. Group, they actually, made a series of ridiculous assumptions that are absolutely not true. And on top of those ridiculous assumptions, they then piled logical fallacies. So it's easy for me to identify it. Like if I say, well, if you do this, then the next thing that will happen is that states won't have access to vaccines. That's not what they're saying. They're not. The CDC is not saying it. ACIP is not saying you're not going to have access to vaccines. What they're saying is, we don't think it's reasonable to expect a newborn baby to take a hepatitis B vaccine when there's no benefit to the baby.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, that's not the same thing as losing access to vaccines. It's a slippery slope. That's going to happen.
And
These all kinds of fallacies. So if you want to learn logical fallacies, the formal logical fallacies like the straw man fallacy and appeal to authority, appeal to fear, you can come to this article and learn a bunch of that.
Fantastic. And I also want to remind people, let's see if I can find, there we go, that if you really want to really understand science, the language of science, so you can really pick this out and be more involved and understand it better, go get some great education at ipac-edu, which is founded by Dr. Jack. It's a fabulous, very affordable online university where these classes, you are interacting online, but with the teacher, and they're also recorded. So if you can't quite make the class because it interferes with your job, or at the same time, you can go watch it later. But this is learning for the sake of learning, and it can be very exciting. And spring term, you can sign up now for classes coming in the spring. Do you want to give a quick description of some of the classes that are coming in the spring, Jack?
We run classes based on how many people sign up. So if you sign up for biology because you need to learn biology, we'll run a section of biology. If you want to learn immunology, we'll do that. If you want to run, the spring courses are down there. If you want us to run an autoimmune course, we have it already in the can. There's a course called the vaccine course and so on. Bernadette and I taught a course on informed consent and medical rights and human rights. The list goes on. There's medical doctors that teach on wellness and health. There's mental wellness, natural approaches towards mental health. And it's just a wonderful compendium of courses. And everything starts about the second week of January, so you have time. And of course, typically, $160 to $180 or so. I have a course on the biology of cancer. It's the world's most in-depth course on that topic. I have probably the world's best course on immunology, if you think about it, because the way I put things together. We have this fantastic course in environmental toxicology. But if we could go back to the popular rationalism for a minute, I hope to see you guys all in class. I want to just step you through some examples of how motivated I am to stop the baloney from ever pervading reality again. I'm on Twitter, and there's these doctors that are there, and they're all saying how rude it is to, if you go down to smashing cancer risk, how rude it is to people who have died from cancer, lost loved ones from cancer, the families of people who've died from cancer, or people currently struggling from cancer, that you can reduce cancer risk. There's doctors out there that do not want people to believe that they can that anybody can reduce the risk of cancer. Cancer is just something that happens to you, as if it's genetic, and that's cruel to me, because there's a huge amount of knowledge on how to reduce your cancer risk.
Exactly.
So I write this huge in-depth article teaching my readers how to reduce cancer in their lives. This is a one-to-one thing from me to you, right? Here you go. Here's what's known about how to reduce cancer risk.
One of the things that I learned years ago that really opened my mind to understanding how much control we have was when I realized that our bodies make cancer all the time. And our bodies fight and battle and get rid of cancer all the time. So something in your own immune system and in your own health status is going wrong when the cancer begins to get out of control.
Yeah, but from my perspective, that's true. From my perspective, you're already too far down the road. What this article really is about is reducing your exposure to toxicants in your life that are known or suspected carcinogens, regardless of the fact that these doctors are out there saying there's nothing you can do. I mean, they're either super ignorant or their payroll depends on people getting cancer. One of the two. Listen, I founded a research journal, Cancer Informatics. I'm still known for my research work in cancer. And so, if we take it topic by topic, this is a huge one. You're going to see action at HHS.
So read the
month.
For our audio only audience, read your title. This article.
So Bernadette has on the screen here one of my Substack articles on popular rationalism. It's time for HHS to update its vitamin D policies. So this is the public-facing viewpoint of a huge white paper that I sent to Secretary Kennedy, and I have it on good authority from an HHS team that they are going to be doing a workforce on vitamin D agency policy across HHS, because the Institutes of Medicine made a mistake, admitted they made a mistake. It's in the peer-reviewed journal literature that there's a mistake on the safe dosing of vitamin D, and yet policy is still citing the wrong science. And this is going to happen in lightning speed over the next couple of months. We're going to see a massive face transplant. Really, what's that movie? Face Off. We're going to see this massive shift in policy expression at HHS. And I didn't do this all on my own. There was a small, tight work group outside to HHS compared to all of our nodes. I sent in the memo. Bobby took it in, and he sent it around to his chosen people at HHS, I suppose you would call them. And next thing you know, I'm in a conversation with them. Like, yeah, we got that vitamin D memo from you. Like, wow, that's really cool. Okay, good. So what this vitamin D memo says is that we need an audit of every agency to find out where the misinformation is being distributed using taxpayer dollars to the American public about vitamin D. The fact is that you can get 18,000 units of vitamin D in 2 or 3 hours of sunlight in the afternoon in most latitudes on a sunny day. And yet HHS has us taking, FDA says, well, maybe it's 4,000, maybe it's 8,000, somewhere around there. When in reality, our daily dose from the sunlight is something like 15, 12, if you go outside at all, right? And our ancestors didn't stay inside on television screens all day long.
Right.
So, what we have is a very, very sick population. And if you actually look at the science of what happens if you take vitamin D supplementation, if you're deficient, your health improves. Absolutely.
Yes.
Right. If you take vitamin D supplementation and you're not deficient, they can't really detect a health benefit per se, but it doesn't mean it's going to be harmful. So studies and things like schizophrenia, absolutely a positive response. Autism and ADHD, absolutely a positive response. Other conditions like depression and mood disorder, absolutely a positive response in the patients that were deficient for vitamin D and given supplementation. It's not a huge response. It's not like vitamin D can, replace all other medicine.
Mhm.
but it makes everything else work better, right?
Absolutely.
It's so
Yeah.
difficult to sort things out mentally if you are with low vitamin D.
Yeah.
It's like a B vitamin when it comes to mood.
Absolutely. And I've interviewed a lot of people on this show about vitamin D and sunshine exposure. And so, supplementing, of course, is fantastic because people don't get enough sun and they're not eating. Um, Organ meat and they're not eating mushrooms. Those are two sources, dietary sources that, our ancestors used to eat in the winter, and they would get some really good vitamin D that way, or cod liver oils and all of that sort of stuff.
Listen,
But the thing,
I've been
the sun,
chastising doctors to say, hey, including the Cohen doctor, you have an opportunity here in the New England Journal of Medicine to remind people that the World Health Organization and the CDC say that 2 high doses of vitamin D will really, really reduce the severity of measles and mortality from measles in patients who need it.
so is that in addition to the vitamin A?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm tired. Vitamin A. Thank
That's
you.
that's all right. But vitamin,
Cheers. This
so
is coffee. I promise.
yeah,
I
yeah.
will.
Years ago, there was a great Zoom meeting with Dr. Tatiana Opokuhanich, who you know, and she was talking about both A and D. They're very important for viral illness.
Yes.
And she was noting how if you're low in one, it makes the symptoms of measles in this area really big. If you're low in D, it was another area. They're both absolutely crucial. But yeah, I
Yeah, and
think
if you
it's
take
the
low doses of vitamin D, you should balance it out with K or A. You're right about that.
right,
So
right.
anyway, my point is there's not enough positive, forward-looking, correct information about vitamin D and its effect on human health at HHS. And agency-wide, there's going to be an audit, and all that misinformation is going to be corrected.
Yeah.
And I hope that we can actually look for new recommendations from the FDA sometime over the next, say, 3 to 6 months.
That's
Um,
great. Did your paper touch on the studies that showed that the heavier you are, the more vitamin D you need?
No, that's a good point, though. That's a really good point.
Yeah,
So,
so that standard dose is different if you're overweight, underweight, that sort of thing. And then the other thing is you still need, even if you're supplementing, exposure to sunshine, even in winter, because there's something about the sunshine that triggers like your vitamin D receptors that so much else is happening with that exposure to the sun. We're creatures on a planet that needs exposure to the sun. Um, and just to make the vitamin D actually work better, to be able to be uptake, the ability to metabolize vitamin D is affected by other things. So it's a very complex issue, and I'm so excited to hear that HHS is going to be on top of that. That is so important. With RSV, I was looking at vitamin D and its relationship to severity, to susceptibility to RSV disease and severity. And it was very clear, mainstream science very clear. And they were looking at cord blood levels and the cord blood levels needed for the baby to then be protected. And then they did some supplement study to see if they could raise in pregnant women the vitamin D levels, but they didn't give them enough. This one study over here wasn't looking at the cord blood studies. They didn't give them enough to raise the cord blood to what was known to be protective.
that's the critical point. So if we do science on vitamin D, we have to actually know that we reached a certain serum level. If we don't reach that serum level, you can supplement all day long. You're still underdosing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Here's the thing when it comes to pregnancy. The studies show that late gestational vitamin D supplementation doesn't really seem to help to help in any way, particular way with fetal or infant health. It doesn't mean that it's not. It doesn't mean it's useless. It just means they didn't pick up an effect. In other words, the science is agnostic. It doesn't know whether it helps at all because they didn't pick it up. That's what a negative result means when you don't do. You should not interpret it as not causing. You should say we don't know. Right?
Okay.
That's what an honest scientist says. But early gestational vitamin D supplementation or even pre-pregnancy supplementation, if you think about it, right, the substrate where that's laid down in the womb is laid down pre-pregnancy.
Okay.
So the mother's vitamin D will determine the health of that environment for the baby even before fertilization.
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
So, right, it's smart to think about it earlier that way. So there should be studies that say, okay, wait a minute, what happens if we keep the serum levels up in the mother 2 to 3 months before pregnancy, throughout pregnancy and early childhood, to things like, oh, I don't know, adverse reactions to vaccines,
Yeah.
right? It's quite possible that these kids might be able to detox a little bit better if they build their biochemistry, and it is built biochemistry in a robust way. So,
And if
do they
they,
have
if
less severe RSV? Do they have less severe influenza when they get it? Measles is a mild childhood illness, right? So
right,
how mild can we make it, right?
right.
Um, it's not a panacea. Let's not kid anyone.
No,
People,
absolutely not. But what we've had is decades of public health agencies absolutely ignoring the foundational building blocks of health, and as if vaccines are all there is to it. And absolutely not. We know that is not the case. Um, I want to return a little bit to the main theme of the show because I want to make sure people really understand. And we had the fun title here of "Stop the Pandemaniacs." I just love that term, Pandemaniacs. Did you coin that, or
I
was that?
did. That's another Lyons-Weilerism. Yes, it is. That's another Jackism. I did it.
Yeah. So
Pandemaniacs. I love it.
just be prepared over the holidays and moving into the new year. If you begin hearing some fear messaging in the media and coming from public health, just take a step back. Remember, there are pandemaniacs out there who make a lot of money of you fearing disease. Step back. Probably go check out James Lyons-Weiler's popular rationalism, and you'll be able to find his response to the latest news that's being circulated out there, fake news
Yeah,
being
I want to
circulated out
point
there.
out that your subscription to Popular Rationalism is free. You can sign up and you'll get it in your email. You can control
Yeah.
the volume, but anyone that does a paid subscription will help me keep these articles coming for sure. So right now, a tiny percentage of people, I have something like 26,000 subscribers, and I think 344 are paid subscribers. I'm not
Oh,
shaming anyone.
no,
Don't feel
bless them.
guilty.
Yeah.
Don't feel guilty if you don't pay and you're a subscriber, but just recognize that
Yeah.
Dr. Jack's got bills too. We're doing okay, but
Yeah.
take a look at this article, the avian flu pandemic. If it goes over your head, find one that you can read. Don't let this be this one sample, which is
Yeah.
highly technical, because it has to be
Mhm.
your first article. Why don't you read something like mortality associated with the U.S. vaccination program is up to 55 times higher than airplane crash deaths, and up
Yeah.
to 125 times higher than automobile travel related deaths.
Wow.
That's an article that should be highlighted, because we all talk about, no, the vaccine doesn't happen. And deaths from vaccine doesn't happen. We're told that, right? We're
Mhm.
told that it's a myth, right to our face. But
Mhm.
you would need 125 times, take the total number of people that die every year from automobile travel related deaths and multiply that by 125 times, and that's your vaccine risk from dying. Is anyone going to sign up for that? And this controls for the number of trips that people typically take. It controls for
Mhm.
both there and back,
Mhm.
right? So traveling by car is a lot safer. And I actually did a calculation during COVID when they were trying to convince people that kids should vaccinate. I said, wait a minute. If you take every child in the United States and drive them pediatric, the physician's office, or to the pharmaceutical, the sweatshop there, what do they call them? Pharmacies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, the risk of dying from a car accident is, if you're a child, the risk of dying from a car accident on your way to get your COVID-19 vaccine is greater than the risk of the chance that you won't be
COVID-19.
saved. Yeah,
Right.
it's greater than the risk of dying from COVID-19, right? So just on that alone, there's no beneficence at all. There's no benefit
No.
to the children. There's just enhanced risk of just car accidents going, because people don't realize how numbers scale up. It's a huge effect of dealing with whole populations. When you
Mhm.
start talking about the risk at the population, things blow up. We're talking about hundreds of millions of people. So you can have a tiny, tiny risk and it's still 10,000 people. or 20,000 people. You know, do we really want to kill a whole town full of kids just to get more COVID vaccines into more arms? It doesn't
Yeah.
protect anyone.
Well, and I hope the point people get about this is, you know, do not panic. What's that famous Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? Don't panic. But we also, you know, Jack, you and us here on Informed Life Radio, we have never downplayed illness. We know that people get ill from circulating, you know, viruses or bacteria, and sometimes they can have a severe outcome, and sometimes these things can kill you. But what we want people to know is truly understand illness, how they get it, why they're susceptible, what they can do about it. Here are the for-profit products on the market that they're trying to sell you. Here's the actual real data, so that people feel empowered to make consumer protection choices and health choices that are based on fact, not fear. And the Pandemaniacs cannot sell you or our government anything without fear, because that's what, you know, that hype is what drives sales and drives really bad policy.
It is. I mean, most people think that when you go to your doctor, that everything you're doing is a decision that's made between you and your doctor. But so why does ACIP even? I was surprised to learn that ACIP even has joint medical decision making as an option as opposed to recommended. Does recommended mean that the doctor says, you know, what goes on and the patient has no say? Well, yes, if you listen to Anthony Fauci, right, which we don't listen to Anthony Fauci anymore, but joint medical decision-making should be the default for every medical decision, every last one of them, unless you are incompetent and can't understand the benefits and the risk. And that's also determined on an individual by individual basis. They can't just assume that the American public is so stupid that nobody can understand that this small benefit is actually probably on par with the risk. So maybe it's not for me, because I'd like to hedge my bets, and I go with the principle of precautionary principle.
Yeah. And two things. Even if you are incompetent, it's not the doctor who makes the decision. It should be your legal guardian, your next of kin, the person who loves you and is going to help have that conversation with the practitioner. And then the other thing is, I like to ask, what else you got? Okay, you want me to take this pharmaceutical, but what else you got? Tell me what else you know. What's my individual risk of having severe outcome? What can I do to improve my situation? True informed consent is not happening because we've got 10-minute doctor meetings when you're in and out. And you know, it's all about billing. How can they bill this? And if they spend too much time actually telling you how to achieve wellness, then
listen, of the two people that are in the room, every medical decision, the decision impacts one of those people far more than the other, and it's the patient. So the patient should be given as much information as possible, including what medical alternatives exist. Not only should they, but that's a central principle of informed consent, actually being told what your options are.
Absolutely. And we're down to the last minute, Jack. I got to let everybody know, if they haven't seen it yet, your fabulous journal, Science, Public Health Policy and the Law, some fantastic articles, peer-reviewed papers. This is a great place for people to bookmark and go back. And it's always the latest things in the news that are being published here. It's really good. Between Popular Rationalism Substack, Public Health Policy Journal, and the Law, you're going to find some really good stuff. And with that, Jack, thank you once again for bringing great information. I think we're about done. The music's going to play us off in a second.
And fuzzballs. We're all done. Anyway, if you go to that journal, it's an organization you can support, the World Society for Ethical Science.
Okay.
Subscribing to that journal, which is a different publication, is peer-reviewed. You become a member of World Society for Ethical Science by subscribing to the journal to help us make the journal even better.
Okay, we'll put that in the Substack, everybody. You can find out then. Have a Merry Christmas, Jack, and a Merry Christmas to everybody. You've been listening to Informed Life Radio on 1150 AM KKNW and CHD TV. We'll see you next week.
Informed Choice Washington is a nonprofit organization that advocates for healthy immunity, medical freedom, and fully informed medical consent. The right to make medical choices without coercion is fundamental to our civil liberties and a basic principle in all human rights declarations. To learn more, tune in each Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. to an Informed Life Radio and visit the website informedchoicewa.org. It's time to take a stand for medical freedom. Go to informedchoicewa.org today.
Did you know that solutions containing iodine can inactivate viruses in the nose and throat in 15 seconds? And hydrogen peroxide can do it in under 30 seconds. Decades of studies, including many conducted during COVID, have shown that properly prepared and used nasal spray and gargling solutions can reduce your risk of infection, reduce viral load, reduce symptoms, and reduce transmission of viruses. To learn more, go to healthyimmunitynow.org and check out the EFU Challenge. Why spread fear and infection when nature provides solutions? Go to healthyimmunitynow.org today.
The information contained in this episode is for informational purposes only. No material is intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment.